I never believed in heaven or hell until I experienced them both in those 28 minutes and 35 seconds when my heart stopped beating. My name is Rosalie Marwood, and this is my testimony. The night started like any other Tuesday in November. The air was crisp with autumn's bite as I rushed to pick up my son, Ethan, from his basketball practice. Being a single mother of 3 after losing my husband James, 2 years prior to a heart attack, had turned my life into a never-ending marathon of work, school activities, and trying to hold our fractured family together. That evening, I was particularly exhausted. I had pulled a double shift at the hospital where I worked as a nurse, and my body ached with fatigue. The road home was dark, winding through the countryside outside of our small town. Ethan was quiet beside me, probably sensing my weariness, his basketball tucked between his knees. My daughters, Isabel and Amelia, were waiting at home with their grandmother, my mother who had moved in with us after James died. "Mom, are you okay?" Ethan asked, his voice piercing through the heavy silence in the car. I smiled weakly, reaching over to squeeze his hand. "Just tired, honey. We'll be home soon." Those were the last words I remember speaking before it happened. Later, I would learn that a truck driver had fallen asleep at the wheel, crossing the center line and hitting our car head-on. The impact was catastrophic, but in that moment, all I recall is a blinding flash of headlights, the screeching of tires, and then nothing. In the moments after the crash, something extraordinary happened. I found myself floating above the twisted metal of what had been our family car. Blue and red lights flashed as emergency vehicles arrived at the scene. Paramedics rushed to extract both me and Ethan from the wreckage. I watched from above as they pulled my bloodied body out and laid it on the asphalt. "No pulse!" Starting compressions, and one of them shouted, "Beginning CPR immediately." Another paramedic carefully removed Ethan, who was unconscious but breathing. I felt no panic, no pain, just a strange detachment as I observed the frantic efforts to revive me. My son's face was covered in blood from a gash on his forehead, but somehow I knew he would survive. I wanted to comfort him, to tell him everything would be okay, but I couldn't interact with the physical world anymore. The paramedics worked on me with determined precision, charging the defibrillator and shocking my heart repeatedly. "We're losing her," one of them cried out. At that moment, I felt a gentle tugging, pulling me away from the scene. I resisted at first, worried about Ethan, about my daughters waiting at home, about my mother who had already lost so much. But the pull grew stronger, impossible to fight. As I reluctantly surrendered to this force, I noticed something incredible. The boundaries of my awareness expanded beyond anything I'd ever experienced. I could suddenly perceive the emergency responders' thoughts, their professional concern mixed with personal anxieties. The young paramedic working frantically on my chest was thinking of his own mother who had died in a similar accident. The police officer directing traffic around the scene was worried about his daughter's upcoming surgery. These impressions came not as words, but as complete understandings, immediate and total. I realized I was perceiving not just their conscious thoughts, but the entirety of their emotional states, their histories, their hopes, and fears. It was overwhelming yet somehow perfectly natural, as if this was how we were always meant to perceive one another, without the barriers of physical bodies and limited senses. Even more astonishing was the realization that I could feel Ethan's presence, not just see his unconscious form being loaded into the ambulance, but sense his essence, his spirit. He was frightened, but also somehow aware of my presence nearby, taking comfort in it despite his unconscious state. I tried to communicate, to send feelings of reassurance and love. Whether he received them, I couldn't tell, but the attempt itself felt significant. As the pull away from the accident scene grew stronger, I began to move through what I can only describe as a tunnel. It wasn't dark, as I might have expected from the stories I'd heard. Instead, it was filled with a soft, pulsing light that seemed almost alive. The further I traveled, the more peaceful I felt, as if every burden I'd ever carried was being lifted from my shoulders. The journey through this tunnel seemed both instantaneous and eternal, outside the constraints of time as we know it. There was a whooshing sound, like wind rushing past my ears, and then I emerged into, there's no other way to describe it, pure light. This wasn't the harsh, blinding light of a hospital examination room or the glare of the sun on a summer day. This light was gentle yet all-encompassing, warm and welcoming, and I realized I was no longer alone. Before me stood a figure so radiant I could hardly look directly at it. Though the figure had no definable features I could discern, I somehow knew this was a being of immense power and love, an angel perhaps, or a messenger from God. The presence conveyed feelings of peace, acceptance, and unconditional love that washed over me in waves. "Rosalie," the being said, though not with an audible voice. The communication was more like a thought transferred directly into my consciousness. "Your time has not yet come." I wanted to argue, to stay in this place of perfect peace, but before I could respond, scenes from my life began to unfold around me. I saw myself as a child, running through sprinklers in our backyard. As a teenager, rebelling against my parents' strict rules. As a young woman, meeting James for the first time in a crowded coffee shop. As a new mother, cradling each of my children shortly after their births. But these weren't just memories. I was reliving each moment, feeling every emotion as if experiencing it for the first time. Joy, pain, love, loss, triumph, and failure. All the complex tapestry of human experience laid bare. Then came moments I didn't remember, times when my actions had affected others in ways I'd never known. A kind word to a colleague who had been contemplating suicide. A moment of patience with a frustrated patient that had changed their outlook on their illness. Even small gestures like giving up my seat on a bus to an elderly man whose day had been brightened by that simple courtesy. I saw how a conversation I'd had with a struggling young nurse had given her the confidence to continue in the profession, eventually leading her to save countless lives. I witnessed how my decision to forgive a neighbor after a bitter dispute had not only healed our relationship, but had inspired her to reconcile with her estranged daughter, mending a family that had been broken for years. I also saw the ripple effects of my harsher moments, times when I'd spoken in anger or acted selfishly, causing pain that spread outward like concentric circles in a pond. A cutting remark to a store clerk who had made a mistake had deepened her already crippling self-doubt. My impatience with an elderly patient had reinforced his fear that he was nothing but a burden. The times I'd been too busy to really listen to my children had left tiny wounds in their hearts, moments when they'd needed me and I hadn't truly been present. There was no judgment from the being of light, only understanding and a gentle urging to learn from what I was seeing. These are the moments that matter, the being communicated. Not the accolades, not the possessions, but the love you've given and received. As these scenes played out, I noticed something troubling. A darkness was creeping in at the edges of the light, like storm clouds gathering on the horizon. The being of light seemed to grow more solemn. "You must choose now, Rosalie," it said. "There is more for you to see." I nodded, or at least conveyed my agreement somehow, and we began to move again. The beautiful light receded as we traveled to what felt like a boundary or threshold. Beyond it lay something very different. Some souls need to understand the full nature of existence, the being explained. To truly value the light, one must comprehend the darkness. Before crossing the darkness, we paused in what seemed like a borderland. Neither the radiant light I had just experienced, nor the deep darkness that loomed ahead. This place existed in perpetual twilight, a realm of muted colors and whispered sounds. Here, souls moved about in what appeared to be ordinary activities, working, talking, resting, but all with a mechanical quality, as if following scripts rather than making genuine choices. Their eyes held a vacant look, and their interactions lacked the vibrancy of true connection. "What is this place?" I asked my guide. "This is the realm of indifference," came the response. These souls neither embraced the light fully nor rejected it entirely. They lived lives of comfort and complacency, never causing great harm, but never extending themselves for others. They took the easy path, the middle road, avoiding both the challenges of love and the temptations of hatred. I watched as one soul approached another, spoke briefly, then moved away without any real exchange having taken place. The interaction was hollow, mere habit without meaning. These souls are not suffering, as you will see in the deeper darkness, my guide explained, but neither are they truly alive in the deepest sense. They exist in a state of numbness, having chosen safety over growth, comfort over compassion, routine over risk. With a chill, I recognized elements of my own life in this twilight realm, the times I'd gone through the motions of caring without truly engaging my heart, the relationships I'd maintained at a comfortable distance, the opportunities for deeper connection I'd avoided out of fear or complacency. Many souls pass through this realm, my guide continued, learning gradually that true fulfillment cannot be found in mere existence. Some eventually choose to risk the pain of real love and move toward the light. Others, fearing what such vulnerability might cost them, slip further into isolation and descend into the deeper darkness. As if to illustrate this point, I saw a soul break from its routine, approaching another with genuine concern. The interaction created a momentary flare of light between them, and both seemed startled by it, one moving toward it with hesitant curiosity, the other recoiling in fear and quickly retreating into the shadows. Each moment offers a choice, my guide said, to open or to close, to connect or to withdraw, to love or to fear. The accumulation of these choices determines one's path. We continued our journey, moving beyond this twilight realm toward the deeper darkness that awaited. As we crossed the threshold, the muted colors faded entirely, leaving only shades of gray that gradually deepened to black. We crossed the threshold, and the peaceful warmth I had experienced was replaced by a creeping cold that seemed to penetrate to my very core. The vibrant colors faded to gray, then darker still, until we were surrounded by a blackness so complete it seemed to swallow all hope. This was not the peaceful darkness of a starless night or a dreamless sleep. This darkness had presence, had weight. It pressed in from all sides, crushing and oppressive. And I was not alone in this place. Shadowy figures moved through the gloom, some wandering aimlessly, others huddled in despair. Their faces were masks of agony, not from physical torture as some might imagine hell to be, but from something far worse, the absolute absence of love and hope. These souls existed in complete isolation, cut off from God's light and from any meaningful connection with others. I heard whispers, thousands of them overlapping, creating a cacophony of regret. If only I had, why didn't I? I never thought. The voices spoke of opportunities missed, of love rejected, of lives spent in pursuit of things that ultimately meant nothing. One figure approached me, its form vaguely human but distorted somehow, as if viewed through rippling water. I chose this, it said, its voice hollow with despair. Every day, with every selfish choice, I built this reality brick by brick. I thought I was free, pursuing my own desires, but I was constructing my prison. As the figure spoke, I could sense its history, a life of wealth and influence, of stepping on others to get ahead, of viewing people as either obstacles or tools. Never once had this soul allowed itself to truly care, to be vulnerable, to put another's needs before its own. Each decision had added another stone to the walls that now surrounded it completely. Another soul drifted nearby, its form even more insubstantial, barely distinguishable from the darkness itself. This one had not built walls, but had allowed itself to fade through neglect, never engaging deeply with life, never standing for anything, never risking love or passion or purpose. Its existence had been so superficial that there was almost nothing left of its essence. The being of light remained beside me, its radiance dimmed but not extinguished in this place of darkness. This is not punishment, it explained. This is the natural consequence of souls who persistently turn away from love, from connection, from the divine light that sustains all creation. They are not condemned here. They have chosen separation. The door remains open, but they cannot see it through the walls they've built around themselves. I felt overwhelming compassion for these lost souls, along with a terrifying realization that the seeds of this same isolation existed in my own life. Times when I'd chosen bitterness over forgiveness, when I'd withdrawn from those who loved me, when I'd put my pain before the needs of my children. Am I destined for this place? I asked, fear gripping me for the first time since leaving my body. Every soul chooses its path, came the reply. Not in a single moment, but in thousands of moments across a lifetime. Your path is not yet determined, Rosalie. That is why you are being shown these things. The scene shifted, and I saw what appeared to be a drama playing out among the shadowy figures. One soul, consumed by its own misery, lashed out at another, seeking to spread its pain. Yet instead of retaliating, the second soul absorbed the blow without response. It was not acceptance, not yet, but a refusal to perpetuate the cycle of hurt. Watch carefully, my guide instructed. Over what seemed like an eternity compressed into moments, I observed as the second soul gradually moved from passive non-resistance to active compassion. Each time it chose not to return darkness for darkness. A tiny spark of light flickered within its core. Eventually, these sparks connected, creating a faint glow that illuminated not only itself, but the space around it. Other souls began to notice this light, some turning away in fear or anger, but others approaching cautiously, drawn to what they had forgotten could exist. The illuminated soul reached out to these curious ones, sharing its growing light freely. Even here, redemption is possible, my guide explained. No soul is ever beyond the reach of divine love, but the choice to accept that love, to turn toward the light rather than away from it, must be made by each individual consciousness. I watched in wonder as several souls, supporting one another, began to move away from the deepest darkness, creating a small community of growing light. Their progress was slow, with occasional retreats back into isolation, but the general movement was upward, toward the threshold we had crossed earlier. Some will journey from the deepest darkness all the way to the heart of the light, my guide continued. Others will progress to a certain point and remain there for what you would perceive as eons before finding the courage to continue their journey. Time here is not as you understand it on Earth. Souls have as long as they need to learn the lessons of love. As if to emphasize this point, the scene shifted again. We moved to what seemed like a borderland between the utter darkness and the realm of light. Here, souls were beginning to turn away from their isolation. Some were reaching out tentatively to others, forming fragile connections. Each act of compassion, each choice to move toward love rather than further into separation, created tiny sparks of light in the gloom. Redemption is always possible, the being told me. As long as there is the will to turn toward the light, there is hope. Even the smallest movement toward love begins to dissolve the walls of separation. I watched as one soul, through what seemed like tremendous effort, reached out to comfort another in distress. The simple act created a burst of light between them, illuminating their forms momentarily. Both seemed startled by this light, but then leaned into it, allowing it to grow stronger. This is the truth that has been taught since ancient times, my guide explained. That love is the force that overcomes darkness, not merely human affection, but divine love that flows through all creation, waiting only to be recognized and embraced. The being then led me away from this middle ground, back toward the realm of light. As we traveled, I began to notice other souls moving alongside us, some just beginning their journey, others far ahead, their forms nearly as radiant as my guides. There are many mansions in my Father's house, the being said, echoing words I recognized from Scripture. Each soul journeys at its own pace, through lessons specifically designed for its growth. Some learn quickly, others require many lifetimes to grasp the simplest truths. But all are held in the same love, all are offered the same grace. We returned to the realm of light, but moved beyond the place where I had first arrived. Now I saw structures of indescribable beauty, formed not of physical materials, but of what seemed like living light. Souls moved among these structures, engaged in what appeared to be joyful work and communion with one another. This is but the outermost region of what you might call heaven, my guide explained. Even here, souls are still journeying, still learning, still growing in their capacity to give and receive love. The journey deeper into the heart of divine reality is endless, for the depths of divine love are infinite. I noticed that many of the souls here were teaching others, sharing wisdom they had gained. Some were creating what looked like art, music made of light, sculptures of flowing energy, gardens of living color that responded to their thoughts. Others seemed to be in deep contemplation or prayer. Each soul expresses its unique essence here, the being said. The gifts and passions that brought you joy on earth are not lost, but transformed, purified of ego and dedicated to the expansion of love and beauty. I thought of my own loves, nursing, tending to my garden, playing the piano, teaching my children. Would these continue in some form? All genuine love and creativity flow from the same source and return to it, came the answer to my unspoken question. Nothing true is ever lost. It is only our attachment to form that makes us believe otherwise. As we continued deeper into this realm, the light grew more intense, yet somehow easier to bear. I began to sense the presence of countless souls all around us, even though I couldn't see distinct forms anymore. It was as if we were moving from individual consciousness toward a more unified awareness, without losing our unique identities. You are experiencing the communion of saints, the great cloud of witnesses that surrounds the earth at all times. These souls, having progressed far in their journey of love, now serve as guardians and guides to those still in physical form. Some you might call guardian angels, others patron saints, still others spirit guides or higher selves. The names matter less than the reality they represent, that no soul journeys alone, that help is always available to those who seek it. In this communion, I sensed the presence of someone familiar, not separate as an individual entity, but recognizable by the unique quality of love we had shared. James, my husband, was somehow part of this great cloud of witnesses. The realization brought tears of joy to my non-physical being. He hadn't disappeared or ceased to exist. He had expanded into something greater, while still retaining the essence of who he had been. Our connection remained, transformed but unbroken. I understood now that his sudden death, which had seemed so senseless and cruel, had been a transition, not an ending. The love we shared continued to exist, to grow, to evolve beyond what it had been in physical form. All true connection transcends physical death, my guide confirmed. The relationships formed in love on earth are never lost, but are refined and expanded here, freed from the limitations and misunderstandings that often cloud human interactions. As this understanding dawned, I sensed James's presence more clearly, not as the man I had known, but as the soul I had always loved beneath the temporary physical form. There was no need for words or even distinct communication. Our connection was immediate and complete. In that moment of recognition, a flood of love passed between us, carrying with it forgiveness for old hurts, gratitude for shared joys, and a profound peace that healed the wound of separation. I realized that he had been with me all along after his death, part of the support system that had helped me continue living and caring for our children despite my grief. Those moments when I had felt a sudden comfort in my darkest hours, the times when a memory had surfaced just when I needed it most, these had been his presence, his love still active in my life. Your children feel his presence too, my guide told me, especially Ethan, who is most sensitive to the non-physical realms. That sensitivity will shape his life's purpose if he chooses to develop it. This revelation about my son brought new questions about my own purpose, about why I was being shown these things if my time to remain here hadn't yet come. "You have a choice now," my guide said, answering my unspoken thoughts again. "You may continue deeper, experiencing more of the infinite dimensions of divine love, or you may return to witness one more reality that will help complete your understanding." Without hesitation, I chose to see more. There was a sense that whatever final vision awaited would be essential to the task that still lay before me on Earth. As we observed this realm of light and purpose, I felt a renewal of the earlier tugging sensation. It was stronger now, insistent. "Your body calls you back," the being said. "Your children need you. Your journey on Earth is not complete." Panic rose within me. "I don't want to go back. There's so much pain there, so much struggle." "Yes," the being acknowledged, "but also so much opportunity for growth, for love, for service. You have seen the darkness that comes from separation, and you have glimpsed the light that awaits beyond earthly existence. Now you must return with this knowledge, to live your remaining days with deeper purpose." Before I could protest further, a new vision opened before me, Earth itself, seen not as the physical planet, but as a spiritual reality. It glowed with countless points of light, each representing a soul in human form. Between these lights ran filaments of connection, some bright and strong, others dim and fraying, creating a vast web of relationship that encompassed the entire globe. "This is humanity as it truly exists," my guide explained. "Not separate individuals, but a single organism, constantly affecting and being affected by each part of itself. Every thought, every action, every choice sends ripples through this web, strengthening connections or weakening them." I could see dark areas where the connections had been severed, where souls existed in isolation from the whole. These corresponded to regions of conflict, poverty, and suffering. Yet even in the darkest areas, points of light remained, souls who continued to reach out, to maintain connection despite the most challenging circumstances. "Your work," my guide said, "is to help heal these broken connections, to remind those in your sphere that they are never truly separate, never truly alone. This is the work of all who glimpse the greater reality and return to share its truth." The vision expanded further, and I saw that Earth itself was not isolated, but connected to the realm of light by countless strands of energy. The boundary between worlds was more permeable than I had imagined, with love and inspiration constantly flowing in both directions. Heaven and Earth are not separate places, but different aspects of a single reality, my guide explained. The veil between them thins or thickens, according to humanity's collective awareness. In every age, there are those who help thin this veil, who remind others of what lies beyond it. You will be one of these bridges now, not through grand pronouncements, but through simple presence, through living from the truth you have witnessed. The tugging sensation became irresistible. I felt myself being pulled away from this realm of light, back through the tunnel, faster and faster. The last thing I heard was the being's voice, still conveying that incredible love and compassion. "Fear not, Rosalie. You are never alone." Then came pain, searing, overwhelming physical pain as I slammed back into my broken body. I heard voices, urgent and surprised. "We've got a pulse. She's back," I gasped, drawing air into lungs that had been still for 28 minutes and 35 seconds. My eyes flew open to a world that now seemed unbearably harsh and limited after what I had experienced. Faces hovered over me, concerned, professional, focusing on my physical survival. They couldn't know that while they had been fighting to restart my heart, I had traveled to the boundaries of existence and back. They couldn't know that I now carried within me both the memory of perfect peace and the sobering vision of what it means to turn away from love. As the ambulance raced toward the hospital, sirens wailing, I tried to form words, to ask about my son. My throat was blocked by breathing tubes, but a paramedic noticed my distress. "Your boy is in the other ambulance," she told me, squeezing my hand. "He's stable. You just focus on staying with us, okay? I closed my eyes, overwhelmed with gratitude that Ethan had survived, that I would have the chance to see all my children again. But mixed with that gratitude was an entirely new understanding of what it meant to be alive, of what truly mattered in this brief, precious existence we call life. In the days that followed, I would tell my family about my experience, sharing as much as I could put into words. Some believed me immediately, recognizing the profound change in my perspective. Others were skeptical, suggesting my visions were merely the result of a brain starved for oxygen. But I knew what I had experienced was real, more real in many ways than the physical world around me. The accident had shattered my body. I had broken both legs, fractured my pelvis, suffered internal bleeding, and sustained a serious head injury. The doctors were amazed I had survived it all, let alone returned after being clinically dead for nearly half an hour. My recovery would take months of painful rehabilitation. Yet throughout that physical ordeal, I carried a peace that surprised everyone around me. The nurses would comment on it during their rounds, asking how I could remain so calm through procedures that made other patients cry out in pain. "I've seen beyond the veil," I would tell them. "This pain is temporary. Love is eternal." During one particularly difficult physical therapy session, when the pain threatened to overwhelm me, I found myself slipping into a meditative state where I could once again sense the presence of my guides. Though not as vivid as during my near-death experience, the connection was unmistakable, a reminder that the other realm remained accessible even while I inhabited my physical body. "The veil is thin for you now," a gentle voice impressed upon my consciousness. "This is both gift and responsibility. You will need to learn to live between worlds." That learning process proved challenging. At times, the contrast between what I had experienced and the mundane realities of daily life created a profound sense of displacement, almost a homesickness for the realm of light. Ordinary conversations could seem trivial, everyday concerns absurdly limited. I sometimes found myself withdrawing, preferring silence to speech that seemed inadequate to convey the truths I had glimpsed. My children noticed this withdrawal and worried. One evening, as I sat alone in our garden staring at the sunset, Isabel, my oldest daughter, joined me. "You're not really here anymore, are you, Mom?" she asked, her voice tight with fear. "Part of you is still wherever you went during the accident." Her words pierced my heart. I turned to see tears streaming down her face. This strong, composed young woman who had been holding our family together since her father's death. I reached for her hand, feeling suddenly the weight of my responsibility to remain present in this life, regardless of what I now knew about the next. "I'm learning how to be in both places," I told her honestly. "How to carry what I learned there into life here. It's not easy, but I'm trying. I promise you, I haven't given up on this life, on you, on our family. In fact, I understand now more than ever how precious every moment with you is." We talked long into the night, Isabel gradually opening up about her own fears, of losing me as we'd lost her father, of being left to raise her younger siblings alone, of the fragility of all she loved. I listened with new ears, hearing beneath her words the soul's deep longing for connection, for certainty in an uncertain world. The only certainty, I finally told her, is love. Everything else changes, shifts, transforms, but love remains. What I can promise you is that my love will never end, whether I'm physically here or not. The connection between us can't be broken, not even by death. My children visited daily, their faces a mixture of concern and relief. Ethan had escaped with relatively minor injuries, a concussion, the gash on his forehead that would leave a scar, and a broken arm. He recovered quickly, as children often do, but something had changed in him as well. He became more thoughtful, more attuned to the feelings of others. "I saw you, Mom," he told me one afternoon when we were alone, his voice barely above a whisper. "When I was unconscious after the crash, I saw you floating above the car. There was a light around you." I took his hand, tears filling my eyes. I was there, sweetheart. I saw you too. Were you going away? He asked, his young face serious. For a little while, I admitted. But I came back for you and your sisters, and because I still have work to do here. Ethan nodded, as if this made perfect sense to him. I saw other people too, he continued. People made of light. They were watching over us. One of them felt like Dad. A shiver ran through me. Yes, I said carefully. I believe your father was there. He watches over us still, just in a different way than before. I know, Ethan said simply. I feel him sometimes, especially when I'm scared or sad. It's like a warm feeling inside that tells me everything will be okay. From that day on, Ethan and I shared a special bond forged by our glimpse beyond the veil. He would come to me with questions about death, about God, about the nature of reality. Questions far beyond his years, but arising from his direct experience. I answered as honestly as I could, never claiming certainty about things I didn't know, but sharing freely what I had witnessed. As my physical recovery progressed, I found myself increasingly drawn to helping others who were facing death or grieving loved ones. My fellow nurses noticed that patients in my cares seemed to find unusual comfort, especially those in their final days. Without imposing my beliefs, I was able to assure them that death was not the end, merely a transition, and that love continued beyond the physical existence we knew. The darkness I had witnessed also stayed with me, not as a fear, but as an urgent reminder of how easy it is to slip into isolation, to build walls instead of bridges. I saw the subtle ways this happened in everyday life, in harbored resentments, in refusing to forgive, in closing one's heart to protect it from pain.